So what we're going to add to this is when you have an all real number situation. Y'all remember seeing that in domain and range when it says X is all real numbers, or you remember the little R or whatever? Okay, that's your all real number situation. And when that happens, your interval notation is from negative infinity to positive infinity. That's because it's every number on the line is a possible answer or a possible solution, right? So everything is a possible. That's why it's from negative infinity to positive infinity, okay? The other thing, when you have the word or, so the word or means that you're going to have two of everything, okay? So if I have the word or, so looking at this, we're going to use ones and fives like your handout. So if it said X is less than 1 or X is greater than 5, notice how there are two inequalities. That means I'm going to have two intervals, okay? So you see how there's two inequalities, agree? There's a gap in it, exactly, because they're not connected. This one is going one direction. This is the inequality, and this is your interval. On page 10? Yes. You already told me that, Seth. We just had a whole conversation. All right, so X is less than 1 or X is greater than 5. Again, with these meet in the middle, if I was to draw this out. No, I would have one line heading this way and one line heading this way. That's why they're their own separate intervals. So the interval for this line is negative infinity to 1, and the interval for this line would be 5 to infinity, because they're their own thing. Do we see that? Yeah? Okay, so when the word or happens, you're still following these same rule and patterns. It just means you're going to have two of them. Two lines, two intervals, two inequalities. Okay? That's what I need you to add onto that little handout. Questions, comments, concerns? So on here, we have f of 2. So f of 2 means that I'm plugging in for x. So I end up with 0. So my answer is f of 2 equals 0. Easy. Okay, again, f of 2. Doesn't matter that it's a different function. Nope. Same thing. Plugging in 2 for x. And I end up with -3. So my answer is f of 2 equals -3. That is function notation. Questions about function notation? All right. So now we're going to practice with set and interval notation. So we have set means I'm using inequalities. Interval means I'm not using inequalities, but brackets and parentheses. Okay. So this is a quadratic function. We agree? That means that it goes on forever. Okay. So my domain here would be what? It would be from negative infinity to positive infinity because it goes on forever. So that would be my interval. My set then would be x. And that is x is all real numbers. Yeah. Huh? Okay. And that's because it's a continuous function that never has a starting or stopping, right? Agreed? All right. Now the range. Range is a different story. What is my lowest y value? 3. So I start at 3, but I continue where? To infinity. So that's my interval. Agreed? So my set would be y, and y is what? This is your inequality. So what would be the inequality represent 3 to infinity? It always starts with the variable. Greater than or equal to 3. That's my set. Because any y value is greater than 3. Okay. All right. So again, we're going to do it again. Just make sure we're all here. So again, I have a quadratic. The domain for this is still going to be negative infinity to positive infinity, all real numbers, right? We agree? All right. The range is what changes. Where do I start? From bottom to top. Bottom. Negative infinity. I start at negative infinity. And what is my top? I work my way to 3. So my interval for the range interval is from negative infinity to 3. And it's a bracket because 3 is included. There we go. So this will be y is less than or equal to 3. Okay. All right. So we're going to do number 5. 5 is a word problem. We're going to do it, and I got to do it over here because I don't have space. It says a store is having a sale on apples, but won't allow you to buy more than 5 pounds. Use interval notation to write the domain and range of the function. C of x equals $2.49 times x, where x is the weight of the apples in pounds and C of x is the cost in dollars. So your domain is what? Represents what? The pounds of apples, right? And you can, what's the least amount of pounds of apples you can buy? 0. And what's the max amount of pounds of apples you can buy? 5. So that is your domain from 0 to 5. Does that make sense? And we write it as an interval because you can buy 1.2 pounds, right? You can buy 3.12 pounds. That's why it's written from 0 to 5. Okay. To find our range, we have to find C of 0 and we have to find C of 5. So what's the most I'm going to pay? It's the least I'm going to pay. $0, obviously, right? Now, for 5, it's $2.49 a pound, and I buy 5. How much am I going to pay? $12.45. Okay, so therefore my range is from where? 0 to $12.45. Was the word problem terrible? No, it was not. It was not. It's easier than you thought. Exactly. Okay. All right. Questions so far? All right. All right. So we're going to move from the practice to the classwork. Okay. The classwork is just kind of our drill to make sure we are making sure we understand how the inequalities work and how the intervals work. Okay. So we're going to do the first 5 that are on your page together, which is what you see up here. Okay. All right. So the I do's I'm going to do, and I'm going to fully explain what I'm doing in that moment. So here I have -3 is less than or equal to x less than 5. Graphically, it shows me that I have a closed circle at -3 and an open circle at 5, which all makes sense based on my inequalities, right? So a closed circle and less than or equal to means I'm working with a bracket. An open circle and strictly less than means I'm working with a parenthesis. And my numbers do not change. So that would be the interval that represented either this inequality or that graph. Okay? All right. Yes. So here we have x is greater than 2, right? And so when I graph that, I'm starting at 2, and numbers that are greater than 2 are to the right. So I go to the right. As I'm heading to the right, that means I'm heading towards positive infinity. So when I write my interval, I start at 2 and it has a parenthesis. Why does it have a parenthesis? It's open. It's strictly less than, right? I mean, less than X, yeah. And then I'm heading to infinity, and infinities are always with parentheses. Still good? So on the remaining 10, you have to do 2 boxes. Okay, so here we have x is less than or equal to 3. And so I'm going to draw the graph, because sometimes having the graph helps you start it off. So I'm going to put a 3, and I want to be less than. So if I'm less than or equal to, that means I'm a closed circle and I'm heading to the end. What number am I heading to? Negative infinity. So my interval is going to start at negative infinity, and I'm going to stop at 3, and it's included because it's equal to, and it's a closed circle. How do we feel? Okay. All right. So who said I'm lost? Okay. So let's give me 2. We have 2 more to do before you claim to be lost. All right. So we have negative infinity to 4. So that means graphically, I am starting at 4 and I'm heading towards negative infinity. So which way would my arrow have to be going? To the left. Otherwise, I'm not heading towards negative infinity. So my inequality, it always starts with a variable. You're describing what are possible solutions. Possible solutions are anything that are less than 4, right? Anything that is less than 4 is a possible solution. Okay. The last one is a only numbers. So I'm compounded or joint inequality. So I have 2 and 6. And at 2 and 6, they're both closed. So they both will have brackets. Because they're both closed and both have brackets, that means that I'm using less than or equal to in the situation. Okay. So the remaining 10 are yours to do. And I advise you to take out your notes, have your interval and set notation handout with you as a guide. I'm going back, but I wanted to show you what you need to have out. Before anyone asks me, what does it say you're doing with this? I felt like if I left out in the bucket, most would try Canvas. All right.